Paperless NGX is one of the best, if not the best, self-hosted document management tool that there is. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to get it set up using Docker Compose and how to get started uploading documents. I'm going to show you a couple different strategies for how to consume documents and just how to use the tool overall, add various tags and be able to filter through your documents and search for the documents that you're looking for. I'm going to try to keep the scope limited to just running this application on my server. I'm just going to whip up a WSL server instance here on Windows, but I do want to show you how to use the mobile applications as well and just kind of talk about some considerations that you should have for external access, including what the mobile apps support on both Android and iOS, because they do have some pretty cool advanced features. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I do want to do is start up a server. So I'm going to do this with WSL and create an Ubuntu server here. First thing I'll do is just check what I have going on, and I just have Docker Desktop going on. So I'm going to do a WSL install d Ubuntu and just get Ubuntu installed and launched. Now, this is just simulating a server. You at home, you're going to be running your server on your mini PC or your old PC or just your crazy home lab setup, whatever you have. I'm just doing this on WSL for the purpose of demonstrating how to do this. So I'm going to create a username, password, do Thomas Wild Tech. Okay, and we're in the server. I'm going to go ahead and open up File Explorer here, and I'm going to type in /WSL $/Ubuntu, and now I have the file system here in File Explorer. The nice thing about this is that I can go to Home, Thomas, and then I'm probably just going to open up VS Code in here because I like working with VS Code for these demonstrations. So let's actually just go ahead and create a folder in my home directory. This is inside of WSL or Ubuntu. I'm going to create that Docker folder, and then now I'm just going to do a right click and open with code. Now, you don't have to use VS Code, but I like it because I can show the file tree, the terminal, and the editor of whatever document I am editing. So I'm going to create a folder called Paperless. So we're going to store the Docker Compose file, and let's just go ahead and create that Docker Compose .yaml. All right, let's open up Google Chrome, and I'm just going to search Paperless documentation, and let's just go to Paperless NGX, and let's just verify that I'm a human. Okay, great. And then let's go to setup, and there are multiple routes. So there is use a script to set up a Docker install, which is fine, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the Docker Compose file because it's not very difficult. Okay, so let's go to this directory here, and they have just kind of an example Compose file with different databases with Tika and without Tika. Apache Tika would be the container that would basically strip text from documents. Let's just see what else it says. If you want to enable official support for Office and other documents, download a file with the Tika name. So yeah, definitely do that. I think it says something about suggesting Postgres. For new installations, it is recommended to use Postgres SQL as the database backend. So yeah, we're just going to do that. And then modify Docker Compose as needed. For example, you may want to change the path to the consumption. So the consumption is a super cool way to be able to have Paperless consume your documents and index them, which is a pretty cool methodology for getting Paperless to index your documents. So let's do Postgres with Tika. This would be my recommended Docker Compose file, and we're just going to copy that, and we're going to paste that in here. So we have broker DB, the database, Postgres, web server, and Gutenberg. So a couple things right off the bat. I do prefer using some bind mounts when I can. So I'm going to bind mount the database. I'm going to do that right into a new PG data directory. And so I no longer need that as a volume. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the data and the media. So basically I'm just saying I want to create a folder right here in the project. Now the data, this might be somewhere you might want to actually, if you're mounting a larger hard drive onto your server, depending on where you mount that, you might want to actually use a path on your hard drive that you're mounting onto your server if you have larger amounts of storage there. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to create a data in media folder here, and then the redis, we can just keep that as a Docker volume. That is totally fine with me. Okay, and then the last thing is this consume folder. So I'm also just going to keep it right here as well if you want to bind mount that to a particular location. Remember, this consume folder, anything that you put in there will get deleted. Paperless is going to grab it and put it into its system, index it, and then it's going to organize it based on the way that you structured the organization for basically the backend. And that's one of the reasons why I like Paperless so much, is because you can organize the file structure of the backend. Speaking of which, we actually need to grab the environmental variables file, and that is located right here. So we're going to get this guy, copy that, and let's create a I think it was docker compose.env. Normally you just create an env file, but in this case the docker compose file is explicitly referring to docker compose.env, so that's fine. Let's paste this in here. Okay, so the first options that we have here are user map, UID, and user map GID, which is the group ID. So these are just set. The default is 1000, which is going to be your user. Like that's typically what your user account is going to be, is the 1000. That's nice because then you own the files that it's using. You might come in here if you end up having Nextcloud also view the paperless documents, the media, as an external library. You might end up wanting to change the user ID or the group ID to the www-data ID. And I will probably show you that in another video. Now, if you're running this behind a reverse proxy, which of course you should always, just because it lets you, get an access log of who is accessing your domains, you're going to use this variable. I'm going to see if I can run this without doing a reverse proxy. In this video, we have a paperless secret key. I haven't actually used this for a public instance of paperless. There are other strategies to protect your paperless, but that is good to know. The time zone, I'll go ahead and uncomment this, and I'll just change that to Denver. Default language to use an OCR. Default, I think this is basically showing you the default, which is English, so that's great. And additional languages to install for text recognition. So default is English. Pretty cool. I'm just going to be sticking with the container installs English, German, Italian, Spanish, and French by default. So that is pretty neat. Let's go ahead and save this. And as long as it's fine with me accessing it directly with the IP address, I think we are good to go. So let me create a terminal here. And then I'm going to sign in by doing a WSL-D Ubuntu. Okay, so now I am in. I'm going to cd into paperless. And then I'm going to do a sudo docker compose up d. Oh, and we don't have Docker installed. So bear with me really quick. We're just going to do a Google search for Docker engine install. I'm going to click on Ubuntu. I'm going to copy and paste these two commands. So we're going to copy and paste. We are going to copy and paste. Yes. Okay, so now we have Docker installed. So now I'm going to do a Docker compose up and -d. Oh, let's do that with a sudo. And now we're pulling the images. Okay, let's clear that up. Let me check the IP address with IP address and then go up, and then you should find the LO, and then number 2 is going to show your IP address right here. So I'm going to copy that and create a new tab here. And what are we running? 8080, I think. Oh, 8000. So port 8000 is where this is running. So port 8000. So here we are with Paperless NGX. Email is optional, but we're going to go ahead and throw that in there. Thomas Wild Tech. Password is too similar to the email address. Wow. Okay, let's try doing just paperless exclamation point. Paperless Thomas at Thomas Wild Tech. Okay, paperless is running. So we do not have any documents. This is where your documents would normally be stored, or you just have a whole list of them and then you can filter through them. Now there are kind of like the high level metadata fields for each document, those being correspondence, tags, and document types. So correspondents are usually whoever has issued the document. So if you have like a bank statement, the correspondent would be the name of the bank account. If you have your government issued ID, the correspondent would be the government who issued the ID. So you kind of get the point with the correspondence. Tags are anything that you want to be able to filter by. So what a document can have multiple tags, and then a document type is going to be like the type of the document. So that might be a bill, it might be a resume, it might be literature. That is going to be like kind of the high level document type. Now, before we start uploading documents, I want to show you a couple environmental variables to add, which I think are pretty essential. So let's go to configuration. Okay, actually, we're going to go to advanced topics, file name handling. So I want to go ahead and start with a good kind of backend file structure, because later in another video, I'll show you how to get Nextcloud also pulling these documents in so you can view them in Nextcloud too. So let's go ahead and add this environmental variable in, and then we can tell Paperless how we want the backend to be organizing our files. So let's go ahead and copy this and come down here. I'll just add a comment for custom variables. We're going to paste that in there. Now, I kind of prefer starting with the document type. So I'm going to cut this and then do a document type, and then I'll do correspondent, and then I will do created year and then title. Now you can customize this to however you want it to look on the back end. All of these variables are available for you to use. So that is pretty awesome. The next two environmental variables I would recommend adding are the paperless consumer recursive, setting that to true, and then the paperless consumer subdirectories as tags. I'll show you why this is really cool. So let's copy and paste both of these, and let's add them down here. So we have the recursive true and paperless, and the subdirectories as tags as true. So here's our consumption folder. What this means is that we can create subfolders within the consumption folder that will then automatically apply tags. And this is a great way to get started. Now, there are a whole bunch of environmental variables here in the configuration, but I think those are really the big ones. The other thing that you can do is set the app title, which I think is really nice of them to do. So let's do that. And we'll say that equals Thomas Wild Tech Docs. Let's keep it shorter. So let's just say Wild Tech Docs. Okay, so let's go ahead and make these changes by taking this down and taking it back up. So let's do a sudo docker compose down. And one thing I noticed is that these do not have container names, which is a little silly. So you end up with these default container names. I think, standard, I would usually put in a container name. I mean, these aren't bad, but the -1 is a little silly. Just makes it easier to check the logs and whatnot for your containers. Let's take it back up. There we go. So there we go. Wild Tech Docs is what it's called now. Okay, so let's check out some. Let's check out using the consumption folder. All right, let's give this a refresh. And then now we have the paperless and we have that consume. Okay, so I have some lecture notes from way back in the day. All right, what do we got? The history of world architecture. So, okay, this is probably not your typical document, but let's create some folders in here. So let's say I want to create a tag called lectures. And then in here, let's also create a tag for architecture. So you can see how powerful this can be, because I might want to have that lectures tag is kind of more generic, and then I have more and more specific tags as I create subdirectories. So if I'm taking a whole bunch of classes, then they might kind of have some overlapping tags. And then let me just copy all of these lectures here and put this right there into the consume folder. And then let's give that a second. Okay, you can see over here, it's processing the documents right now. And because the server is creating these tags, I haven't created them yet, they're not going to have an owner. So what that means is that I am going to want to just come in here and edit this, come to edit permissions, and then I want to select myself as the owner. And the default matching algorithm is document contains any of these words. I'm going to change that to just learn matching automatically. Save that, matching automatic, and we're going to do the same thing, change that owner to myself, and learn matching automatically. So the learn matching automatically, ideally what that means is that in the future, if I upload another document and it parses the text, it, based on the history of the tags that I've applied to other documents, it should be able to be smart enough to say, hey, I think this is a lecture. And hey, I think this is about architecture. Not sure about my choice with the plural there. Probably that should have probably just been lecture, but it's okay. So let's go back to our consumption folder and refresh this. And they're all gone. See, the consumption folder has consumed the documents. Let's look at the documents themselves. So we have each lecture. You can process multiple documents by checking them to take an action, or you can double click on the document to kind of go to it. So this will show you the document itself and then the details about the document. So it doesn't yet have a correspondent. I do want to put a correspondent. So here I'll say Texas A&M University, because that's where it came from, and then hit save. And then document type, I'm going to create one. And in this case, I will have a high-level document type called lecture. I think that's fine. So unfortunately, it would have been smarter of me to do one lecture first, because it probably would have been able to guess the correspondent and the document type for the other lectures. But now I'm going to have to do that for each of these. So if you're uploading like a bajillion documents, I would suggest you go one at a time and put the correspondence in the document type, make sure they have the right tags, and then kind of test out a batch to see if you end up getting the right metadata being assigned. Okay, so how is it storing this so far? Let's see how it's storing it. So if I go to my paperless folder and I go to media, go to documents, and then you have originals and you have archive. Originals are the copy of the document before it has done like any processing, any OCR. The archive is after it has done stuff to it. Now look, you can see I have lecture, Texas A&M University, 2012. And look, it actually pulled that date itself. I didn't actually put that in there. See, date created. So it will look at a document and kind of figure out what the date created was based on what it finds in the document, which is pretty cool. Now, why do I still have this none in here? None. One of the lecture two, I did not set that up. So let's save that. And what's really cool is that it's going to move this in real time. Refresh, it's gone. It's not there anymore. That none folder, it's gone because I don't have a none correspondent anymore. Okay, so now that you kind of get the gist of using the software, hopefully I kind of showed you enough. Let's actually try installing the mobile application on Android. So I'm going to open up Google Play and search Paperless, and we have Paperless Mobile. So that's perfect. And unfortunately, I don't actually think that my WSL IP address is going to work. Okay, so because WSL has its own subnetting, I cannot access WSL from my mobile phone. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this again real quick in VirtualBox so I have an actual IP address on the same network. Okay, so I have Paperless set up on a new VirtualBox Ubuntu server. Probably should have just done that. So let's grab the IP address and see what that is. And here we go. This is going to be the IP address that I want to connect to from my mobile phone. So let's type that in. We got 192.168.4.238. Okay, so this is a nice little feature on the Android app, is that you can configure this to have mutual TLS authentication. So normally you just have certificates on the server, but you can configure your reverse proxy for the client to also provide a certificate so that the server also authenticates the client. So this is a great way if you do make this public to the public web with no zero trust layer, you would probably want to configure MTLS to be more secure. Otherwise, just have a zero trust layer in front of this, whether it's Authentic or Cloudflare zero trust. I would do that, or just host this over tailscale or VPN. Let's go ahead and hit continue, and we're going to sign in. So Thomas, and this was Paperless exclamation point. Sign in. Awesome. Okay, so the beautiful thing about the mobile application is that you can just scan documents on the go, especially if you don't really care that much about the quality. You know, if you really need a high quality scan, use your scanner at home, but otherwise, this is amazing. So I'm going to use the scanner, and let's scan this thermocalc software because this is the only thing I had laying around. Okay, so we're going to click on the camera button, and yes, I want to allow it. And I'm going to move it, see if I can find it. Okay. Oh, okay, I really just don't have much lying around, so I'm going to try this piano book here of Ravel and see what we can get. So it's not auto-detecting it. Let's just go and snap it. So I will just go ahead and use the little controls here. Normally, it is pretty good at getting the edges, so I don't know if it's just because it's kind of not a super standard document. So I'm going to go ahead and check mark that, and then I'm going to do another page. Okay, so doesn't have to be perfect here. Bring this down. Okay. And then let's do one more page here. And again, auto detection, that's failing me right now. Okay, and check. And we've got that. We're just going to hit upload. Looks like document type is music. See if I can add that. Create. Change that to Ravel. Tags. I'll give it a tag of music also. And then let's also give it a tag of Ravel. Why not? And create that. Check. Okay. And upload. So it's going to process that document. I can see that it's processing it here on the dashboard. Go and give that a refresh. Oh, in this case, I did a JPEG instead of a PDF. So I probably should have chosen a PDF, but it is what it is. You can, when you scan the document, you can select that you want it to be a PDF document. Now, if I go to my documents and refresh, I can now see that list of documents. And it's really easy to filter by correspondent or by tag. You can filter that. Obviously, I'm still going to have my same filter. Now, for iOS, there is a different app, and I don't want to go too deep into it. So let's go to the App Store and let's search Paperless. And I believe it's called Swift Paperless. So that is the application. I'm going to go ahead and open that. You can enable Touch ID, which is awesome. And look, okay, you can see my water bills here. So this is actually going to my current instance, my actual instance here. So if you want to see my document types, I have bill, document, education, finance, receipt, tax, correspondence. Right now I'm filtering on water bill, but I can change that to like pretty much anything else. So super cool, incredible way to organize your documents. If you have any questions on setting up paperless, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Please like and subscribe to the video, and I will see you in the next one. All right.